Good evening, everyone. It's May 28th, 2020, and welcome to the school committee meeting for Douglas Public Schools. And tonight we'll be interviewing superintendent candidates. And we are going to let him in because we're already behind.
So here's your first candidate, and I believe that all of you at one point or another have had an opportunity to meet Richard Lind. So I am going to leave you to it. I believe most of you know each other, and I'm going to turn off my screen, but I'll be here as you need me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Good evening, Mr. Lind. I have not met you yet. I'm Lisa Brown, and we also have Kelly Grady, Julie Mulder, Becky Cherniak, and Heather Morin. And I'm gonna, since we're a little bit behind already, I'm gonna let you get right in and start, and you can begin.
Okay. So
Hi, everyone.
first question for you.
Well, he's gonna do a little.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Richard Lind. I currently live in Bellingham, Massachusetts with my wife of 22 years. My son, who is a senior in high school, heading off to college next year, hopefully, given the situation. Our two dogs and my mother-in-law. And that order is not purposeful. The door's closed, so she didn't hear me. That's good. So I've had a pretty eclectic career. I started a very long time ago as honestly an instructional assistant, and decided to go back to school to teach after being in the business world for a little while after college. Found it was not for me and decided to become a teacher. I'd always loved coaching, so went and did that. Loved it. Had a great opportunity to move to Grafton as a dean of students and then an assistant principal and principal. Spent a number of years there, about 13 years there. And after Grafton, had a chance to move along to a number of other communities in different roles, including director of curriculum and superintendent. So I think that wide range of experiences has really served me well in my role. In terms of kind of who I am, I have I guess a number of three core beliefs. And I learned this from a number of different people along the way. Number one is always to focus on relationships. I think if we build strong relationships with individuals and groups within our community and outside of our community, we're going to be a stronger school system for it. And we're also going to provide for our students at a much greater depth and breadth. Second, focus on building great programs. You'll hear me often say, I'm not a big fan of just looking at MCAS scores to judge a school district. MCAS scores are a data point. They're not who we are as a community. And so I believe if we build a great program, measures such as MCAS will be improved. And lastly, we need to be able to do more with less by thinking outside the box. And that would include prioritized budgeting, partnerships with the town and the community, and fiscal responsibility. Because when we do go to want to do something or implement a new program, we need to have the resources to be able to do that. And so we want to be fiscally responsible so we can do that and for the town's sake. So those are kind of my three core beliefs. I'm ready to get started. Fire away.
Okay, so now I'm up. My apologies, stepping on your toes right away from the get-go. And I really want to thank you for your patience with this technological world of interviewing. I know it's not easy on all sides, but thank you.
You're welcome.
The first question, At this point, how do you envision school reopening in the fall? How are you going to plan for school during COVID-19? And who are you going to consult in the process?
So there's ongoing communication between and among superintendents, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, Mass Association of Superintendents, and a variety of other stakeholder groups. So there's going to be a lot of resources for school districts. I attended a meeting yesterday with the commissioner about this. So we're definitely going to tap into those resources. I think importantly, connecting with other local communities in our immediate area, working with our unions. They were a huge part of making sure that we develop a reentry plan that makes sense. Certainly communicating with school committee, parents, and the town to make sure that we can develop a plan that ensures, one, kids get what they need, educationally speaking, but first and foremost to make sure that it's a safe environment for everybody, kids, staff, parents, who visitors, etc. So it's really important to tap into all those resources. There are many, and we'll have to take advantage of those because this is new ground for all of us, and we're going to have to sort of rely on each other to come up with plans that make sense.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi. Sorry, I'm always having trouble with technology here. So what do you consider are your strengths and your weaknesses? The infamous question.
Strengths and weaknesses. Okay. So in terms of strengths, I mentioned one earlier. I think I have a great eclectic background that really allows me to understand the various job roles within our school district. And that's a huge piece. I had a superintendent once who was never a principal, and he always sort of assumed he knew what being a principal was. And we as principals always looked at him and said, you know, he was a great superintendent, but you really don't know what it's like to be a principal. And I've served in every educational role, never been a custodian or worked in food services officially. Certainly I've done my share of cleaning up and serving food. But that would be one strength that I think has served me well over time. Second, I started my career in special education. I worked in a couple of different environments, including a day in residential school, a collaborative program, and a public school. And I think when you work with students who struggle the most, who have the most challenges, you really learn how to support kids and staff in a way that allows the students with those challenges to thrive. And I think that has served me very well. And then lastly, I have a real love of the curriculum piece, and that's why I went from principal into central office and working in the field of curriculum. And I was lucky enough to have some pretty nice connections with Jay McTighe, who's one of the absolute sort of world-class people in curriculum development. I sort of lucked into it, and that's okay. And really learned an awful lot about developing curriculum and professional development, to be honest, because they're so closely tied. And I think that is a third thing that serves me very well. In terms of weaknesses, I want to get things done. I like process. I like going through and making sure that everybody is heard. But I think one of the challenges that schools often have is sometimes we talk things to death. I think sometimes we have a lot of good ideas. We have a lot of smart people. I think part of it is let's get going and then adjust on the fly. It doesn't mean you don't do plans and you're not careful. You certainly are, but the best laid plans, you're always going to have tweaks to that. So I like to get going, and sometimes that really is frustrating for me, and I think for other people, because I say, let's get going, let's move forward, and we start developing action plans. And I sometimes have to check myself to make sure everybody is comfortable moving forward. But you know, I think I've recognized that over time, and been able to sort of think about that as we do move forward with those types of initiative and opportunities that we might do. A second challenge, I guess, would be that to a fault, I believe that all kids can learn and meet their potential. I would rather give every student an opportunity for any program that they would like, and I hate to call it a weakness, but sometimes it leads to kids and families being overwhelmed, or staff feeling like they're, you know, that maybe a student is in a position that they're not going to be successful in. But in my own experience with my own child, having him attempt courses even when they were maybe more challenging than he was ready for, it's always easier to me to step back from that than have a child go into something and not be challenged at all by it, and because it's harder to sort of move up. But it is a challenge for me to sort of make sure that I'm checking myself and understanding what the challenges that student might face, because I always want children to have that best opportunity for the most challenging course or program, and it might not be in their best interest to do that, and so relying on folks to keep me in check on that as well.
Okay, thank you. Please describe a challenge in your school district, the steps you took on that challenge, and what the outcome was.
So our biggest challenge in North Brookfield is our size. We are 600 students strong, pre-K to 12. So we are really small, and we have a grade 7 through 12 high school with 250 kids. As you might imagine, staffing patterns follow the number of students you have, and it's been really, really difficult to offer students the type of programming that they would like, that they need. And so, you know, our biggest issue was we can't offer the number of courses they need. And I was reading through a professional journal and saw an article on a school called the Village Green Virtual School, and it's a charter school in Providence, Rhode Island, with 250 kids in it. And it talked about how they are a brick and mortar school. Kids go to school there every day, but they use online and virtual classrooms within those classes, and they use a program called Edgenuity. Edgenuity for a lot of school districts is credit recovery. They use it to help kids who need to go through credit recovery. But Edgenuity has a lot more to offer than that. They have a full range of middle and high school courses, all the different levels, 13 AP courses, and they've partnered with Sophia, which is an online company that does dual enrollment courses for high school kids and college students. So we decided and in addition, they have probably about 100 interest-based electives, anything from CTE courses, vocational types of skills, to areas of interest, arts, music, engineering and math, history, all different types of courses. And so we worked in year one, a couple of years ago, with a small group of teachers as a pilot. We worked with the company, and we implemented using this online program with our students. We had some good success. We learned a lot. There were some challenges. But this year we expanded it. And I'm happy to say that despite some of the challenges that still exist, for example, some of our kids don't have internet access at home. It makes it hard to do schoolwork at home. But kids come to school, they have regular periods, and if they have an edgenuity class, it is scheduled into their day. They have a 52-minute block that they go in and they log in. There's a teacher from our school assigned there who supports kids with good teaching practices, but not in terms of doing the instruction, the direct instruction. That is through the program. And I'm happy to say we had 44 enrollments, so more than a student might have taken more than one, in dual enrollment classes. So we went from about 14 enrollments, because we were working with Mount Wachusett to offer some dual enrollment on campus, but only had 7 kids take courses, one fall and one spring. So that's 14 enrollments. We went up to 44 enrollments in dual enrollment. We have kids who have gotten credit at the college level. We expanded our AP offerings from 4 AP courses, that's all we could offer, to 13. We had 102 enrollments in interest-based electives, anything from photography to psychology to accounting to Microsoft Office certification courses, medical terminology courses, just a wide range of opportunities in addition to credit recovery. So the challenge was we could not service the kids and the families the way they were looking to be serviced in terms of the programming. And we found a solution and implemented it. And we understand that online learning doesn't work for everyone, but it certainly addressed a lot of needs for a lot of students. And our hope is to continue this. In fact, we are moving forward with a one-to-one program. We were not one-to-one. Kids got a Chromebook in school and used it in school during their edgenuity classes, which was challenging. We were sharing a lot of devices. Next year, we're purchasing or leasing Chromebooks for all 257 through 12th graders, and they'll be able to take those to and from school. So we saw the challenge, we developed a plan, we implemented it. And as different challenges have come up or problems have come up, we've brainstormed and tried to solve them. So that's a big one. I'm really proud of that one.
Thank you. So the next question I have is, how do you handle the budget and financial aspects of your district?
So it's a really collaborative process. We really focus on bottom up, telling us what they need. That's our staff sitting down starting in November, really designing and telling us, I need this materials, I need this equipment, I need these curriculum resources. We need these staff members, and it works its way up through the principals, program directors, et cetera, to the point where I sit with each director or principal and go through their budget. We then work with the school committee to outline it through a couple of different meetings and a workshop. We usually hold a school committee budget workshop where school committee members get to sit with our principals and our program directors in kind of a rotating fashion and to ask them questions about their budget, learn more about it. Our school committee is our biggest advocates for the budget at the town level. So we really need school committee members to understand the budget and be supportive of it and have all their questions answered. In the meantime, I spend a lot of time trying to work with our municipal partners, finance committee, selectmen, keep them in the loop, and certainly try to keep parents and the community in the loop through regular communication. I have a couple of different philosophies around budget. One is all budget items need to relate to our district improvement plan, our school improvement plans, and other, and certainly state mandates. So if we have budget items that don't tie into one of those things, to me, that's something we have to consider eliminating. Second, I think we really need to work towards that fiscal responsibility I mentioned earlier, and that starts with looking at some of the funding beyond what the state and the town can provide. things like circuit breaker and school choice and our federal grants, those are monies that you can carry over year to year, and really to focus on whatever we collect in year one year, that's what we can spend in the next year. And that creates a lot of fiscal responsibility. So if your district collects about, I believe, about $700,000 in school choice in this year, that's what's applied as an offset in FY21. You can't spend beyond that, because then you're tapping into the money you're collecting in 21 that you would use for 22. And you end up with a structural deficit at some point. And that's when you see big cuts, as long as it's not a major recession coming, I guess. But I'm really excited about the work we've done in North Brookfield over the past 3 years, because given the state projections, right now we will have no staff cuts from where we're at. So the school committee, the select board and FinCom has designated a 0.4 increase for our school department on FY21 in North Brookfield. Past 2 years, we've gotten 2.5% and 2%, and we continue to be able to do the things we need to do. We've added programs that I'm excited about, and so I think doing more with less, fiscal responsibility, and having a really tight process that you really hold people accountable to. I think that's how I would define or outline my budget strategies.
Great. And just so you're aware, we have about 10 more questions that we're going to try to get through. Just so you can plan out the timing a little bit. What is your experience in advocating for state and federal grants and other sources of funding?
So one of my previous roles as a director of curriculum, I was responsible for grants. I've written the Title I, the Title IIA, the Title III, Title IVA grants previously in my district. Certainly as a superintendent, I'm responsible for that. We've written as a team several grants. We don't have a grant writer on staff, so we sort of share the responsibility in a lot of ways amongst the team in North Brookfield. We've written the safety grant that came out last year. We were able to purchase a brand new phone system for our school district that supported our crisis plan. We had a very old system that didn't tie into the police department, that didn't tie in between buildings. We were able to do that. We've received a number of other grants that have supported, programming and technology within our district. So I think they're key parts. I always worry about our federal grants, because over the years we've seen a slow reduction in those. Title I, there's been talk over the past 3 or 4 years to eliminate Title IIA, which is really the professional development grant. And those are always worrisome. So again, it's about building capacity within to make sure that if there are program cuts, funding cuts, we're able to manage those when and if there are reductions. And certainly, I'm sure we will see reductions with the issues around COVID-19 and tight budgets. So that's certainly something that grant writing will be an important part of trying to supplement a budget.
So this builds a little bit on that last question. What is your vision for moving our specific district forward in light of limitations of budget?
So I think it's really important to number one, connect with all the stakeholders. It's not only getting to know people; it's hearing what's working and what's not. And when I say what's not working, it's more like what needs to be tweaked. There's always room for improvement. I compare it to my golf game. It's never going to be good enough. You always want to get a little bit better. And part of that is learning the strengths of the people, because there are a lot of talented people who can bring a lot to, that already are within our district, whether they're staff, whether they're parents, whether they're community members. whether they're organizations. So number one is we need to get to know, I need to get to know everybody. They need to get to know me. And we need to really figure out what our strengths are, what our challenges are, and move forward. You know, by first tapping into the strengths of the people that are already there. So I think that's the first piece. Second, you know, you start to develop individual goals and action plans around those strengths and challenges. And I tend to be more on the side of, let's take advantage of our strengths rather than try to, quote unquote, fix the areas of challenge. Because I think once we tie into strengths, it becomes much easier to figure out how to improve areas of challenge or weakness. So that's how I tend to look for people's strengths and say, how can we work off of that, and how might that help us in some of the areas where maybe we're struggling a bit. So that would be second. And then lastly, I am a big advocate of sort of memorializing plans like that and holding myself and others accountable to accomplishing those goals and action plans. So every district committee and every school committee in my school district currently has a SMART goal plan with, you know, maybe multiple goals, multiple objectives, action plans, people who are responsible for accomplishing it, and then regular check-ins to see how are we doing. I think we all understand once we design goals and action plans, they won't always sort of follow the pathway we wanted, but we'll always be moving forward and be able to tweak the plan so that we can get where we need to be. So that's kind of how I would, you know, move things forward. I think it's really about listening to start and then identifying strengths.
Okay. My question is, how do you stay involved with students in the district?
So that isn't a problem for me. My favorite place to be is classrooms. I told people when I first started in North Brookfield, if you're ever looking for me, look in the cafeteria. My favorite place is a school cafeteria. I know that's crazy. I know most people would say, what would you want to be there for? It's loud, there's lots of kids, it's kind of chaotic at times. It is my favorite time of the day. All the kids are together. You can see what's going on, who's hanging out with who's talking to who's not, and be able to really get your sort of fingers on the pulse of how the school is going and what the climate and culture is. And it's not sort of the, I don't know, the traditional, you know, what you see in the movies with the teacher who just sits at the front of the cafeteria or, you know, just stands at a doorway. I like to walk around, talk with kids, sit with kids. And so that's number one. I'm always in the classrooms, in the hallway, or right around lunchtime in the cafeteria. I'm pretty proud to say that I think every kid in North Brookfield knows who I am. They know my name. I think most, if not all, student names in North Brookfield, pre-K to 12. I am, you know, someone moves in and is new, and you walk into a classroom and there's a new student, and they say, hey, who's the tall guy? Because I'm pretty tall. All the kids will go, that's Mr. Lin, don't you know? Like, and that feels pretty good. So I am a regular fixture in classrooms, hallways. I think that is the only way to really know how things are going in a school. Second, I am a regular at events and activities. I try to ensure that I'm at each, a minimum of one event or activity for every group. And that might be a board meeting for the student council. It might be a book club after school meeting. It might be a basketball game. It could be concerts or theater rehearsal. My goal is to be out there. I think that ties into one of my core beliefs, which is to focus on relationships. And you build relationships by being with people. and talking with people. So.
All right. How do you advocate for your district to the local community and to the state?
So I think there's a couple of things that that I've learned over time. One is early and often create relationships with municipal partners. And municipal partners are not just your board of selectmen and your finance committee. Certainly they are important in the budget process and beyond. But there are so many more municipal partners to connect with. Your police and fire and EMS, important in terms of your safety and security and crisis plans. Your senior center, there's great opportunity for connection between senior centers and schools. Your public library. So these are ways that you connect. And some of the ways that I have is, for example, we did a curriculum project with the senior center where our seniors created really biographies for some of our senior citizens, photo biographies of their lives. These are folks who have had unbelievable experiences, historical times that they've been a part of that our kids can only watch on TV through a History Channel program or read about. These are folks who lived through it. I think the other, one of the other pieces is we participated when our town library got a new director. They just implement a new strategic plan. We had a member of our administrative staff join that. And I think that's how you connect with your local community. In terms of the state, again, when you first start this role as superintendent, you just want to, you want to not forget anything. Because there's so much to do. But as I'm in my 4th year now, I feel more comfortable. So this year, I not only am participating in the Worcester County Superintendents Association, but I'm actually on the executive board. I'm the treasurer secretary, and in FY21, I will be the vice chair of the Worcester County Roundtable, Worcester County Superintendents Association. The state's broken up into different roundtable groups of superintendents who work together, attend conferences through MASS, that's connecting with other superintendents, and that's where we connect with the state an awful lot. That's our advocacy group. And lastly, our district, in my first year, joined on MASC. And I think that's another important advocacy group for a community and a district. And so those are the ways that I think you can do that. And again, it's being present at various events and activities, not just school events, but townwide events. That's how you connect with people.
Thank you. What is your leadership style and your vision of where Douglas Schools should be heading?
So leadership style is, I believe in a collaborative approach. I am, I guess, a stickler for making sure that we have all sorts of stakeholders involved in different committees and groups. I'm a stickler for making sure that everybody has an opportunity for input, that we're developing plans with goals and action plans, that everybody has a role. And when someone doesn't feel like they have a role, you got to find a way to give them a role. And I'll give you an example. You have PTOs, you have SPED, you have sort of more formal groups and organizations, that booster clubs that parents can join. Well, not all parents are comfortable joining groups such as those. And I saw that. And one of the groups that I saw that was really challenging was dads. A lot of dads don't want to go to PTO meetings. I've been to a lot of PTO meetings, and it's mostly moms. It's just kind of how it has happened over time. So I pulled together what I call the North Brookfield Warriors, and it's a group of people that sign up, and they're on call, to help with anything we might need help with. So we were painting a hallway in our elementary school, and I called the NB Warriors, and they came and we painted it in one night. There's no meetings, there's no regular sort of membership requirements. All you have to do is sign up for it, and when we need something, we send an email, and if you can do it, you show up. And it's great. Now we started with about 10 people, and you get up to 20, 25 people, and when you ask for help, you have too much, and that's a good problem to have. So I think that's really the important way to grow leadership. Second, by involving a lot of people, you do grow in-house leaders. It's really important to sort of distribute leadership, because that creates ownership. I certainly don't have all the answers, and certainly there are people I work with who have far greater skills in different areas than I do. I want them to lead various initiatives where their strengths will take us much further than I could take that group. So that's a second sort of quality in my leadership approach that I think has bared out some success. And lastly, it's about accountability, and first and foremost, being accountable, holding myself accountable publicly. And it makes it a heck of a lot easier to hold others accountable if they know you're holding yourself accountable. And so that's kind of my leadership style. In terms of in Douglas, again, when you come into a new place, the idea is you need to create relationships first and find out, what's working, what's not, what's happening, who the players are in terms of strengths and challenges. And I think I've become pretty good at that over time, and the ability to start to pull together teams of people to address some of the challenges through using our strengths. So that's how I would describe my leadership style.
I'd like to find out what your relationship is with staff and with school leaders. So
I view us as a family, as a team. I'm a big sports fan, so I do a lot of sort of the sports related. There's no I in team kind of thing. But so for me, that relationship building starts with the first day of school, first day staff return. So every year since my second year of being a principal, we spend time doing team building activities. And most people see that on the schedule and they go, what's that? I just need to get in my room. And at the end of the day, we actually have lots of people smiling and working together and having fun. I always base it on the old TV show. I don't even know if it's on anymore, The Amazing Race. Used to be on Sunday nights, and the teams traveled around the world doing these kind of strange tasks. And that's what I designed. We had 13 different teams of, about 8 people on each team, running around our school and our campus doing all sorts of tasks to try to be first, because people are competitive. But they had a great time, and we grouped people in a way that they weren't always with the people they're always with. So we sort of made sure it was mixed up a little, a high school teacher working with a kindergarten teacher, and different groupings. And so to me, it starts with that first day, and it's really important to build strong, positive relationships. In terms of our administrative team, I hold regular team meetings every other week. And on the off weeks, I hold individual sessions with all administrators. And those are really, both the administrative team meetings and the individual sessions are speak your mind kinds of times. It is a time to sort of air it out. And if there are disagreements about how to proceed, that's the time to do it. And I encourage that. I never hold anybody accountable for disagreeing with me or not. I think that's really important to do. I also hold regular sessions with our staff. Usually once a quarter, go sit in the library, let staff know, I'm going to be there after school. I don't have any agenda per se. There might be some brief updates on budget or MCAS or other kind of large idea things, but it's usually an open agenda for people to come and talk to me. They don't always have access. They're busy all day. They're in classrooms all day. So it's hard to sit down with people during the school day. I certainly make myself available when they do ask. And lastly, I focus on strong relationships with the various unions. I think, again, learning early as a principal, set up every other week or at worst every month meetings with your union, your building reps, your executive board. Tell them when things are challenging, and encourage them to tell you when things are challenging, so that you can address those problems before they really become problems. And we've been really lucky. We've not really had to deal too much with the sort of the grievance process in North Brookfield. And I won't say that's luck. Part of that is that legwork to sort of cut off problems before they grow into something big. So that's my approach in terms of building relationships. And visibility and being present.
Kind of building on that, how do you effectively communicate with parents in the community?
So I said this in one of the other groups, I don't recall which one, but back in maybe my first year of being a principal at a middle school, I said, oh my God, parents don't know what's going on because nothing gets home. Middle school students, either if it goes into their bag, there's a black hole in there, but often it doesn't seem to make it into their bag, notices, and letters, and flyers. And so I said, we got to communicate better with parents in terms of information. So that year I created email groups by hand, because we didn't have sort of the systems we have today that can upload parent emails en masse. And I had an email group for each class. And on a weekly basis, I send out a newsletter. It currently is about 8 Google Doc pages long. I copy and paste it right into the email. It is not a link to the website, because people hate links. They open up their email and say, click this link to get here. No, just put it right in the body of the email. And people, I tell people, I know it's long, but skim through, find the things that are important to you. That has been by far, and in some ways it's sad to say, maybe the most popular thing I ever did for parents as an administrator, but it was so appreciated that, flyers to events, permission slips for field trips, calendars, events, activities, important announcements about budget or other things are all in there. So that in and of itself has created great conversations, because I often get replies from parents, and they're not always just thanks for sending this. It questions saying, tell me more about the budget. What's your concern about whatever's going on? And it creates that open line of two-way communication. Obviously, social media. I am on Twitter. The folks in North Brookfield there's not a large Twitter group. They are a big Facebook group, so we have gotten Facebook going. I created Facebook accounts for our district, and now all the schools and departments have their own Facebook pages that tie it to the schools. So try to use that more as a platform for information and celebration. And then again, I offer in general what I used to call principals' coffees, now superintendent's coffees. Again, once a quarter, a couple times a quarter, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon, and sometimes in the evening. Again, they're open sessions for parents to come. I might have a brief update about something, again, MCAS or budget or some other larger topic, but by and large, they're pretty agenda-free. They're open sessions for people to ask questions on things that might be happening. And again, attend events and activities, because there's nothing easier than being at a soccer game and a parent being able to come up and say, hey, you know what, I was thinking about this, and now that I see you here, I'm able to ask. And that's a really important part of the job, is to be present. So that's, to me, how you build relationships.
Thank you. How will you, as a superintendent, continue to improve our academic performance and create opportunities to appeal to the students from pre-K to 12th grade?
So I talked a little bit earlier about the Edgenuity program, and I think that's the type of sort of example that I would give to create programs. I believe in building great programs, and you focus on that by sort of finding out what the kids need or what they want, and that includes their families, of course. And so if there's a need or a want that exists, how can we fill that? And that's where you think outside the box. And like I said, we, with this Edgenuity program, it has come together beautifully and created a lot of different opportunities for kids. They also have a middle school piece to this that, again, we're going one-to-one next year, so we're going to expand that opportunity. At the elementary level, I think tying into reading and writing, we really focused on Readers and Writers Workshop. And this year, North Brookfield Elementary School won the Massachusetts Reading Association Exemplary Reading Program Award, which we're very proud of. I think that's out of all the schools in the state, to be one of the schools identified at the elementary level was fantastic news. How did all those things come together? Well, you evaluate data, you look at where the needs are, you gather people with a stake in it and expertise. So with Readers and Writers Workshop, I needed classroom teachers, I needed our reading specialists, I needed our principal to want to do this, and for them to lead it, not for me. And that's what I focus on, is trying to create the pathways for those staff to do what they do what they can do. They use their expertise, their knowledge, their skill to design programs to support kids. So that's how I have approached building a great program. I think that's the key. I don't know what Douglas's needs are. That would be what I would add. When I come on board, I would meet with the school committee, administrators, teachers, staff, parents, kids, community members, and ask them about the Douglas Public Schools and say, tell me more. Tell me what is working. Tell me what you think could be improved. And then who are the people that can help us get that done? Who has expertise in the district and interest to get that done? And I think that's how you build any great program and move it from an initiative, something that we do, to who we are. Because you don't want initiatives to always be something we do. You want them to be just who we are. Just becomes part of our DNA in terms of how we move forward. So.
Great, thank you. Where will you and where will the Douglas Public Schools be 5 years from now?
Well, let's think on the positive side. I will be ending my 5th year as the superintendent of the Douglas Public Schools. We will be running around this time of the year a lot of different programs and activities, but also end of the year surveys and focus groups, and the feedback from our students, our staff, our parents, and our community will be really positive in terms of the direction that we're heading. Where that will be specifically will depend on sort of what we need to focus on upon arrival, and what our strengths are and what our challenges are. But I feel like my sort of history is to take on programs, to seek out ways to improve them, and to move them forward at a steady pace. I don't think I try to ever design a program that's going to, instantly fix everything, because when you do that, they tend to instantly go away too. I think you need to build capacity and sustainability through leadership opportunities, through building capacity of your staff, train the trainer models, other approaches that allow you to do things year in and year out. Give teachers and staff time to become experts at, for example, Readers and Writers Workshop. We didn't win the award in year 1 of Readers and Writers Workshop because our teachers were just learning. now in year 3, they're pretty good at it, and they're only getting better. So I think that's important. And then lastly, hire great people. We're always going to need to hire people. Hire the best. It's something one of my first superintendents said to me. Most important job you'll do as an administrator is hire great people. If you do that, your program will slowly become great. So to me, that's how you do it. And that's where we'll be in 5 years. Is I will be able to come to school committee with the results of a satisfaction surveys and be able to show you improved programming. You'll see that in various measures, not just MCAS. You'll see it in discipline. You'll see it in attendance. You'll see it in other testing measures that we might use. But it's not just MCAS that you'll see results in. You'll see it across the board.
Okay, this is the last question we have. So
Okay.
we have 3 qualified candidates for this position. Why do you believe you are the right choice for Douglas?
So from my end, I believe that my sort of wide range of background that I bring to this role can only be matched. I have 4 years now as a superintendent, 3 years as a director of curriculum, about 12 years as a principal, about 5 years as a teacher, 2 or 3 years as an instructional assistant. I mean, I don't think there are many folks out there with that level of sort of experience in each role within a school district. And so I know what I can bring. I know that I am a team builder and a program builder. And from Douglas's end, this is a district and a town, and I said this in one of my previous meetings, and it's sort of hard to explain, but it fits my eye. It's kind of a golf term. As you might tell, I love golf, but it fits my eye. Some golf holes just fit a golfer's eye. They look at it and they go, "I can play this. I'm gonna score well on this hole." And Douglas fits my eye, and I think it fits my eye because my experiences in similar districts. When I first started in Grafton was a smaller, rural, suburban community. Ashland was not nearly as big as it was. Seekonk. These are smaller communities that have grown since in some ways, but when I was there, they were smaller, and they were very much like Douglas, and that's what draws me to Douglas. I just believe that this is the type of district that I would do my best work in moving forward.
Thank you.
Great. That's all the questions we have. So if you'd like to have a closing statement, we have plenty of time left.
Sure. So thank you very much to you, the school committee, to even have the confidence in me to bring me on as a finalist. I really do appreciate it. I know whatever decision you make is always in the best interest of your community. I certainly would love the opportunity to come on board and work with you and work with the administrators and staff and students and parents of Douglas. I think would be a great fit for me, and I think it would be a great fit for Douglas. But however this turns out, I really appreciate the opportunity. I know you'll make a tough decision with any of the 3 finalists. I'm sure each are very qualified to do the job, and I wish you luck with it. I hope to talk to you again, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Great. Thank you. We appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know you have a long night, so I'm gonna log off. I believe I think Tracy might be there, so that you can move on and get ready for your next meeting. I know you have quite a bit to do. So have a great night.
You too.
Thank you very
Bye-bye,
much.
everyone.
I'll be in touch, Mr. Lind.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Bye-bye.
And you all can take a break because your next finalist is not here. So if you want, I can turn off. I know we'll keep streaming, but essentially what you would be doing is calling a recess and if you want to take a 10-minute break and go stretch and get another glass of water, I'll keep an eye on things here, and we can pick this back up in 10 or 15 minutes once our person's here.
All right, thanks, Tracy.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Very good. All right. I'll handle things on this end.
Thank you.
So we can, everyone is back around. We can have,
Tracy, my video won't come on.
oh
It says
dear.
you can, oh, it has to ask you to start my video. Okay, there you go. Thank you.
There we go. Did that work? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Do the same for Julie here, see if that helps her.
I'm here.
I was gonna say, I thought I saw you coming back and forth there. There we go.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, we got everybody. Important to have all the faces. Okay, so I will run the same way we did before. I'll let Dr. Reese in and turn it back over to Lisa.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Reese. Thank you for joining us. I believe you've met a number of the school committee members. There may be a few that you haven't, but I'm going to turn you over to Lisa Brown, and she'll take it from here.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Dr. Reese.
Good evening. How are you?
Welcome. Joining us is the other members of the school committee, Julie Mulder, Kelly Grady, Heather Morin, and Becky Cherniak. We're going to let you start, and you can have a little intro, and then we have about 14 questions to get through after that, and hopefully we'll have time for a little closing at the end.
Sure. Well, I just want to thank you once again for the opportunity to interview for this position. I'm really excited about Douglas and the chance. I think what I've seen and what I've been able to read about, a lot of the challenges that Douglas is facing, as well as a lot of the goals that you have as a district, really fit in with my strengths. I see a big focus on social emotional learning. That's something that when I was in Amesbury, we did a lot of work in developing that, embedding that within our curriculum, and continued work into Westport. I also noticed that there were a lot of goals around kind of how you maintain students in the district and how you promote what's happening at the high school level so that students will stay and also be better prepared for whether they're going on to college or career. We've done a lot in Westport around bringing in programs and pathways for students, looking at what some of the critical areas are in a region and identifying ways that we can make educational pathways that students can either get a certificate or be better prepared when they enter into college in that field. And I know, Douglas as well as Westport and all communities right now are struggling with the budget and how to really maximize the productivity and the opportunities for students while recognizing that there's not a lot of funds available. I have a lot of experience on that. I think I've done a lot with Westport, with Amesbury,
You're
and
cutting out a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I love this virtual interview process. So what I was saying was, I've had a lot of experience around budget and really looking at how do we maximize our supports for students while also acknowledging the limitations within the community. So I'm looking forward to continuing to have some conversation with you this evening.
We'll start with Becky. Thank you.
Hi, Gary. It seems to do a little bit better when you're closer to the audio or a little bit louder. I'm not sure if that's the solution, but that's just what it seems like. Okay, so question number 1. At this point, how do you envision school reopening in the fall? How are you going to plan for school during COVID-19, and who are you going to consult in the process?
So we're still waiting for some guidance from the state. We've been meeting with the commissioner pretty much every week and getting updates. At this point, they should have some updates for us by the middle of next week around summer work. And then by the middle of June, they should have some guidance around reopening. We've already started to do that planning in Westport. We've started with looking first at medical needs and what are the things that we might need to purchase in terms of supplies and equipment, PPE materials for students and staff so that we can make sure that everyone is safe when they enter the building. It would be a multifaceted process in terms of a reentry plan. We'd look at first the safety needs, the physical structure of the building, the academic needs. We recognize that during a remote learning period, especially one that came on so suddenly and we hadn't had the opportunity to prepare for it, there's a range of student ability in terms of being able to handle that. And I think I've spoken with some of the people here about, even my son, who had done well in school, he's an 8th grader, struggled with remote learning. And so he's going to be entering into school next year at a disadvantage because he hasn't been able to access the same level of curriculum as other students have. So I think once we get guidance from the state in terms of the summer programming, we may want to look at what we can do during the summer to help remediate and support students that may have been struggling. There are some funds available through the CARES Act, and those funds can be used for, and it's based on your Title I allocation, those funds can be used for things such as programmatic needs. So we could look at summer programming for students. We're also going to have to, when students come into the building in September, whether it's part-time, full-time, that still needs to be determined, but we'll need to do some assessment of our students to determine really where their skills are. The state has identified essential standards that they want us to be looking at, and so we need to see where the students are within those skills and then make sure that we're meeting the needs. The state has been really vocal about not wanting to see kids retained, and so we recognize that by moving as many kids as we can on, we're also going to have a greater range of skills, and so we need to make sure we have some interventions in place to support those students. Sorry, it's very hot in here.
Okay. What do you consider are your strengths and weaknesses?
I think one of my biggest strengths is my communication skills. I am good at listening carefully to people when they have concern or a question, really getting at the heart of what their issue is. A lot of times people may come in with one concern or one issue, but really when you dig deeper with them, you find out that it's an underlying issue that if we don't address that issue, we're not going to be able to help the—
Wait, hang on one second. It's hard to hear you, so it's not helping your communication skills here.
So they're not working very well tonight.
Try it again.
So I was just saying that in terms of my communication skills, I'm really good at listening to the individuals and their concerns and really digging deeper with them and getting at part of whatever their issue is. A lot of times people may come in and think this is the problem or what their complaint is. As you dig deeper with it and realize that there's another underlying factor that if you don't address that issue, it's just going to repeat. Am I cutting out again?
Cutting out, but I can read lips, so I know what you're saying.
So I'm gonna move a little closer.
Okay.
Is that better? Oop. Nope. Okay. Is that better?
So far, yes.
It's good for
Okay.
some time. Yeah.
We can also try having you log out and log back in if you want. We're running plenty on time, so like that doesn't screw us up if you think that would help.
Well, why don't we try that?
Okay. I'll keep an eye on things and we'll let you back in.
Okay, thank you. I apologize.
Not your fault. It's technology. It defeats us all.
Yeah, we had one interview where the person couldn't even like have a communication with us with her face there. It was so bad. Remember that, Becky?
Yeah, no, she had to shut off the video, but I'd like to avoid that if possible here. And I don't know if anybody else is hearing it, but when Kelly talks, it's like I'm getting this feedback. Is anybody else hearing that? It's like a little clicking noise in the background, like she's on the set of Stranger Things or something. It's just for Kelly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know.
No,
It's that Douglas cable, it's the best.
You know what it might be is our Wi-Fi is so bad I have a repeater on my computer.
Uh-huh.
And it might be that. But if I take it out, I'm going to be off of here. So.
I can still totally understand you. There's no skip.
Okay.
Just like rattling like you've been invaded. But
All right, let's try Dr. Reese again. Fingers crossed.
So I think communication is one of my biggest strengths. I think also a strength is just an understanding of the curriculum from grades pre-K to 12. I've had an opportunity to work as an educator in most of those grades, and working as a director of curriculum for a number of years, I really had the chance to dig in deeper to the standards and the frameworks. And I think I have a good understanding of how to work with the teachers around those standards. I think having worked in small districts, I have the advantage of you often have limited staff and support staff for yourself. And so I've had the opportunity to work around grants, to work with curriculum, and to do ELL, to do all the different components that in larger districts you may see multiple people serving those roles. And I think that really is an advantage staying in a smaller district, because I understand how all those aspects of education work. And if there is the support staff, I can support them, or I can also take the leadership role on there. I think one of my weaknesses is probably because I've had all of those ranges of experiences, sometimes I'm not as willing to give up ownership of a task. And so I think for myself, it's been kind of a learning experience of being able to trust the people around me and recognize their strengths and let go of some of the responsibility.
Can you describe a challenge in your school district, the steps you took to address it, and what the outcome was?
Sure. So I think a big challenge that we've encountered over the past few years in our district has been around somewhat of a toxic culture and climate. And it's something that the staff have identified as an issue and concern, students have identified, parents have identified. And so what we had done this year was we provided everyone with surveys to make sure that, you know, we were thinking it was a problem, but how big of a problem, how prevalent was it for everyone else? So we had people complete surveys. Then we also submitted for a grant, and it was a school redesign grant. And as part of that grant, we had to identify a problem of practice. And our problem of practice was around culture and climate. We went and spent a weekend having a team that included a teacher, a parent, a school committee member, myself, and a building administrator. And we developed a plan moving forward for how we might address it within each building, as well as at the district level. We developed a district curriculum, a district climate and culture committee. And we reached out to all staff to participate, to volunteer to participate. We had planned on having about 15 people involved. We ended up having about 30 people that wanted to participate. And initially I was going to limit the number. And then I felt if there are 30 people that are really invested in how do we support culture and climate in the district, I don't want to discourage them by not having the opportunity to participate. So we were having monthly meetings and looking at what were some of the issues. We were working with a consultant and trying to identify really what are the factors that, again, getting to the heart of the issue that caused some of our issues around culture and climate. And a lot of it related back to when there was a transition in buildings, when we had to close the middle school down and the process that happened then. And there was also some level of mistrust with some of the administration. And so that was impacting staff's ability to move forward. So we started to work on a plan, and the plans were going to be specific to each building. We had an overarching goal of how do we address this as a district, but we recognized that each building had its own unique challenges. Obviously, COVID-19 and school closure interfered with our process, but the plan was that by the end of the school year, they would have their own goal in place. They would then spend the summer developing an action plan and then start implementing it in the fall. So we got a little sidetracked, but that was their goal moving forward.
Thank you. Can you tell me how you would handle the budget and financial aspects of your districts?
Sure. So first it starts with just working with the administration and with the teachers to get a better understanding of what the needs are of the district, taking a look at our goals and making sure that when we're making some difficult decisions about what we can support or can't support with the budget, that they all are in alignment with our overarching goals. And then in terms of a budget process, it's really working with the town and the school committee and members of the community. I always feel that it's important. I recognize that there are people that may not have kids in schools, that may not be connected to the schools, and may be less supportive of a school budget. And so it's important for me to get out into the community and try to meet with those different groups of people so that they can understand what are the drivers of a school budget and what's the impact of supporting the students of the community in the long run for the overall well-being of the community. So for example, in Westport, we had started to go out to the senior center and things like that to really promote an understanding of what the budget was. And then as we move along with the budget process, it's just being able to develop a clear and transparent budget presentation that can be shared with the school committee, can be shared with the community. I find that if I can try to predict, if I've spent time talking to members of the community, talking to the town officials, and can predict what some of their questions might be and incorporate those into my presentation, it helps people feel better about allocating that level of funds.
Great, thanks. You've touched on this a little bit. What is your experience in advocating for state and federal grants and other sources of funding?
So in terms of the state and federal grants, a lot of them are entitlement grants. So it's just a matter of making sure that we are accurately capturing all of our free and reduced students, accurately capturing the demographic that determines what the allocation will be for those grants. In terms of competitive grants at the state and federal level, I think it's being aware of what grants are available, looking at and carefully analyzing which grants best fit into the needs of the district, and then working to develop and write a grant. That may be one that we might write ourselves as a district, or there have been times that I've looked at a grant and really been excited about that opportunity, but recognize that Westport as a small community wouldn't necessarily be eligible. So then I've worked with neighboring communities to develop a joint grant so that the goal would be to still be able to access it at Westport, even though we recognize that alone we wouldn't be able to access those funds.
How do you stay involved with students in the district?
Visibility, getting out into the schools, spending time in the classrooms, spending time with the clubs and attending events, extracurricular activities, athletic events. I find that students, if they see me out and about and they see me at their events that go beyond just their academic experience, they're more apt to feel comfortable with me. I also try to reach out to students when we're doing trying to make decisions around things and make sure that students have a voice. So as we were going into this summer and looking at our seniors and the fact that graduation was going to look very different for them, we started as a team to develop, well, we could do this, or we could do this. We could have a drive-by graduation. And then we stopped and said, let's bring the students into this and give them a voice and find out really what they want to do. And so while we have initially planned on them doing a virtual graduation in June, they overwhelmingly wanted a live graduation, and they were willing to wait until August to attempt to have that live graduation. So I think making sure that when we're making some of these decisions, we get the student voice, have the students, I've had students that have wanted to have some changes or have clubs and activities. And so I'll meet with those students and help them learn those advocacy skills. What do they have to do if they want to get a new club or activity in the school? Is there something what's the proposal look like? how do they communicate that out to the school committee? And so really working with them so that they develop those leadership skills that they're going to help them further in life.
So we're wondering, what is your vision for moving the district forward in light of limitations of budget?
I think it's using the funds and the supports that we have in place wisely. I think it's being able to identify really what are our overarching goals for the district and what things can we maintain that are going to support those goals, and acknowledging that there may be things that we have to cut that are less supportive of those goals but will help us in other areas. One of the things that I think when people start looking at budget cuts, they start looking at the high school level, but we need to recognize that at the lower grade levels, the significance of the early learning skills that students need to have in place in order to be successful. So I think whenever you develop a plan of how to support or how to grow a district, you have to first start looking at what's happening at the preschool, what's happening in kindergarten, because those are building block skills for later success in school. So if we just address what's happening at the high school, and then we're missing a big piece, and we're going to constantly have issues. So I think it would be a comprehensive review of curriculum, starting at the pre-K, K level, all the way up, making sure that we're using our resources wisely, and also making sure that the materials and resources we're using best meet the needs. I think sometimes what happens when you get a new program in place, you tend to get all the bells and whistles with the program. And then if you really stop and look at it, not everything is necessarily important for students to develop the skills and understanding. So really being reflective of when we're making purchases, what is most necessary for moving our students forward. And that's where we might be able to save some funds.
Can you tell us how you advocate for your district to the local community and also to the state?
So in terms of the local community, I work closely with the town officials. I do a lot of, when I was in Amesbury, it was a city, so there was a city council, and I did a lot of outreach to each of the individual city council members when I first got there. My understanding was that some of them were not so much in favor of education and of the school district, and so I wanted to spend some time with each of them really understanding what are their concerns, and then pinpointing and recalibrating them to more accurate information, because I found that a lot of their perceptions weren't necessarily based in accurate information. So I think it's outreach to them, meeting regularly, communicating about what's going on in the schools. I think what also helps within the community in terms of advocacy is making sure that we are doing a lot around public relations. We want to make sure that when we're in the news, it's not just for something bad that happened. So as often as we can come up with good stories that highlight the excellent things that are happening in the school district, the unique things that make Douglas Douglas or makes Westport Westport, we want to make sure that people understand that and that we're celebrating it. And in terms of at the state level, we'll reach out to our state reps and just have conversations about education. As we're looking at funding for next year, I've had some conversations with our state reps around what does Chapter 70 look like? How can we advocate for our schools? What information can I provide to them that will better support their ability to advocate for us at a state level? And I think just participating in the Superintendent's Association is a great way that they're definitely an advocate for the state, and being a member of that, and also working with them on the Professional Development Committee as a steering committee member. I think it just helps me get a better understanding of what the needs are and how we can advocate for that both at the local and state level.
Thank you. Can you tell me what's your leadership style and your vision of where Douglas schools should be heading?
So my leadership style is very much collaborative. I try to, as much as sometimes it's hard for me to give up ultimate responsibility for things, I also recognize that I am surrounded by a group of intelligent, skilled individuals who have strengths in their specific area of expertise that I may not have. So I want to make sure when we're looking at making decisions at the administrative level, we're working together. All members of the team have an equal voice. We want to make sure, and it's always been important to me, that it's not just about the principals or about this individual, but when we're making decisions, we want to even hear from the maintenance and facilities department, because sometimes some of the discussions that come up, they have some thoughts that might help come up with a stronger solution. So I think that's very much my approach. I also said this in one of the other interviews, that as much as I'm a collaborator, I also recognize that we're part of a team and I'm the captain of the team. So there are times when, as the captain, I need to set the direction and say where we're going. And then there are times that we're working together to coach people around that, or just work collaboratively with that. And the second part to your question again was?
Sorry, I went on mute. And what is your vision of where Douglas Schools should be heading?
I think my vision for Douglas Schools is making sure that it's a community school district that people respect, that people are excited to be a part of, that you don't see students leaving Douglas to go to neighboring communities, choicing out to neighboring communities. My vision would be that we provide the best education for our students in the community that will help them be prepared to enter college and enter the workforce. And not only will we know that we are the best, but everyone in the community will recognize Douglas for what it can offer the students of the community.
What is your relationship with staff and with school leaders?
So
you don't have air conditioning, do you?
No, I don't. No, can you tell?
No.
Yeah, I can tell. And of course, I'm trying to use the lighting so that it looks good, and that's just not helping that much. So my relationship with the staff, I think, is really strong because they see me visible and they know that I'm there to support them and that I'm I want to highlight the things that they're doing and the positive aspects and contributions they make to the school and to the community. So staff see me in the building every week. They see me walking around, they see me talking to students, I talk to them. It's important that I know their names and I know their roles in the school and learn a little bit about them and their families. So I try to really stay connected with staff, and I find that that type of relationship building is helpful when there may be an issue or a conflict, that I can I've built a piggy bank of that support, that when there's an issue, I can withdraw from the bank a little bit and still be able to maintain that relationship with the staff. And I think it's very similar with my administrative team. We work together, we respect one another, we spend time during the summer working on what are the norms of how we're going to work together. And then we actually developed a set of norms, laminated it, we reference it at our meetings, and we also make sure we had conversations about, so how do you call someone on it if you feel like they're not honoring our norms? Because it shouldn't be something necessarily that I have to do every time, or that I may not notice something happening. So we had conversations about, okay, so if you see someone that isn't fully engaged, that may not be coming at an issue with an expectation that, I'm trying to, that there's this underlying feeling that people are coming with good intentions and not to, and so sometimes people start to challenge that or question that. And so we had to have conversations about, so how do you, if you feel like someone's not addressing, not being respectful to you, not listening, what do you do with them? How do you deal with it? And we had to develop as a team what would be the way we would respond to that. So I think a lot of it with my team is really working collaboratively. I respect them immensely. They are an incredible force, and I think when you respect people, when you're transparent with people, that builds the trust and the relationship between each other.
Thank you. How do you effectively communicate with parents in the community?
So there are multiple ways for communication with parents in the community. One is just getting out there into the community and face-to-face types of communications. It's also being visible at events and activities and communicating with families at that time. We also, when I first got to Westport, there had been a Facebook page and I had heard some concerns around it. So we stopped the Facebook page and just started doing a Twitter feed. Within 24 hours, I had a number of parents expressing concerns about the lack of the Facebook page because that was the mode that they used to gather information. And so we had to come up with some strategies of how do we continue to offer that Facebook page, but also monitor it in a way that it's not used for people to complain or make negative comments. So we have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter feed. We also, as a leadership team, we are doing monthly newsletters. And so the central office does a month. What I had done is identified each week, one of the schools would submit a newsletter. And then at the end of the month, it would be the central office staff. And so the business manager does something, the curriculum director does something, and then I put it all together into a monthly newsletter. And during this period of school closure, we had to find different ways to get out and ensure that people were getting the types of communications that they needed. So I had started doing a weekly State of the Schools address. And so every Friday, I record my address, and basically I try to highlight what are the things that are happening at the state level, either communicated through the governor or through the commissioner in terms of schools and education. What's the impact of those types of guidelines on Westport? How are we moving forward with that? I've tried to highlight a student or students. I've asked them to send in pictures of what they're doing during this remote learning time, and then I've highlighted them. I started more recently highlighting my family as well, because I said to the students, if I'm asking you to share how you and your families are spending your time during this remote time, I should be doing the same. So each week I've added something about what I'm doing with my kids. And then I end the time with some type of learning activity. And so a lot of it has been science experiments. And I put on a science jacket and the silly science glasses, but I do some type of science experiment, and I've tried to focus on what are the things that they have at home that they can access in terms of materials and resources in order to be able to try out those science experiments. And that's been really, I think, a popular way to stay connected with the students during this time and with the families.
Thank you.
Welcome.
How will you as a superintendent continue to improve our academic performance and create opportunities to appeal to students from pre-K to 12th grade?
So the first thing we need to do is really take a close look at the curriculum and make sure that it's rigorous and it provides the opportunities for our students as they transition out of high school to be successful in college and career. I know some of the documents I had seen from Douglas, you were looking at different pathways, and I think we'd want to explore what are those pathways that are going to be most critical to promoting success for students in college and beyond. There's been a lot around technology and engineering, biomedical, and so we can explore those and then look at how do we bring those into the district. We've been working with a company called Project Lead the Way, and it's actually endorsed by the Massachusetts Department of Education. And it's been a really great resource and tool for our teachers. We started at the high school level, and then we were seeing such benefits with the students, not just about learning the content, but also learning how to be critical thinkers, how to write more reflectively, how to ask questions and explore topics. So those types of skills that aren't just for the content area, but really help students or adults be successful. We moved it down to the middle school level, and then more recently we just got a grant this past spring to introduce it at the elementary school levels. And It's going to be something that's going to supplement our science curriculum, but it's very hands-on, it's project-based, and I think it's engaging for our students and will help them be successful whether or not they're exploring a career in science. I think the other thing we need to do is really make sure that we have programs and activities and clubs that meet the needs of all students. We want to make sure that every student has something that connects them to the school beyond just coming to attending classes. There's been enough research out there about school violence, about school dropout, that if we don't find something that's going to engage our students, there's going to be an issue for those students. And we need to make sure that we're offering something and staying connected with each student in a way that they know they're valued and respected, and they're excited about coming to school, because while they might not be necessarily academically excited, they have something that's keeping them engaged in being at school. And I think we need to look at that both at the high school level, but also at the lower grade levels as well. What can we do to make sure that we're continuing to keep our students engaged and providing the opportunities both academically as well as extracurricular-wise just to keep our students engaged and invested. And I think what happens is, as you continue to identify those, you're going to see less students choicing out. And for those students that do choice out, we need to start to explore with them and with their families, why are they choosing to go somewhere else? Because if we can get a better understanding of why they're choosing to go somewhere else, and we start to identify a pattern, well, that's an area that we can address as a district. So.
Thank you. Where will you and where will the Douglas Public Schools be 5 years from now?
I think we will be a district that is recognized within the Blackstone Valley for its academic rigor and excellence. We will be recognized for our advanced placement offerings and the accomplishments of our students in advanced placement. We need to make sure that in order to do that, we're providing some of these pre-AP type courses and training for our staff and for our students so that we can see more kids entering into AP classes and being successful. I think it'll be a community that other students from other neighboring districts will want to come to Douglas, and we'll be having to look at we might have to limit the number of students that are choicing in because we're getting so many requests to come into Douglas. For myself, I said it earlier, I'm not one that really likes to leave a district. I know my experience in Westport was short. Amesbury was only a few years. Amesbury, I moved down due to a family change down this area. So I tried for 6 months to stay in Amesbury, and I just couldn't do a 2-hour commute each way. So I want to be there leading Douglas, working collaboratively with the students, the staff, the families, and the community, and really continue to grow. And I think, as I said earlier, I think my experiences and skills really fit in with what I've seen as some of the challenges that Douglas might be facing, and it's exciting for me to work on those challenges together.
Sorry, it takes me a while to find the unmute button.
That's okay.
This is the last question, and it builds a little bit on what you were saying, so whatever you'd like to add. We have 3 qualified candidates for this position. Why do you believe you are the right choice for Douglas?
I think I am the right choice because of the experiences I've had over my 25 years in education. I think working within a special education background as a teacher, that gave me the opportunity to really understand how to meet the needs of a wide range of students, whether it be students with disabilities, English language learners, students with social emotional issues. So I think that's always been at the heart of my work as an educational leader, making sure that we're providing opportunities for our students to ensure that they can be included as fully as possible within the regular classroom environment, because I believe that's where students belong with their peers and not separated from them. I think my skills around budgeting have really been a benefit for both Amesbury and Westport. My advocacy within the community for the budget, but also my ability to work with the other administrators and the teachers really to develop a budget that I think is fair, but also respectful of the financial constraints of the community. And I think I've been able to communicate that in both communities and get a little bit more than they initially had intended for the school department. But I think once, as they see the transparency around the budget and I'm able to clearly articulate the needs within the budget, I've been able to garner the support. So I recognize that you've got 3 excellent candidates, and that's a good place for you to be in. But I certainly think that my skills and experiences really, from my perspective, are the best fit.
Well, that's all the questions we have. If you want to add anything else, we have time. So completely up to you.
No, just once again, I want to thank you. I appreciate the time you've spent to do this. I appreciate the challenge of doing it in a virtual atmosphere. I think that's been both a challenge for the candidates, but also for you, because you don't get that opportunity to make that face-to-face connection, or even when you did the virtual site visit to Westport, to really sit down and have those types of dialogues with people and also get a chance to see the district. So I appreciate, you moving forward with the process and the challenge associated with selecting someone. And I just look forward to hearing from you and moving forward.
Great. We appreciate you taking the time. And if anybody has anything to add, everyone all set?
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Reese. As you know,
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
So you'll hear from me
Thank
then.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You guys are doing really well. So I've been in touch with your next finalist. He's going to come a bit early because he was, of course, scheduled for much later. So but if you plan on taking about 20 minutes now for a recess, I think about then is about when he'll be coming back. And I'll keep an eye in the waiting room. I'll turn my camera back on to let you know when he's there, and you can get back to order before we bring him in. Okay. Does that work?
Yep.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. How we all doing? Heather's here. Heather's back. Heather somehow got bumped out again. Sorry about that.
Internet went down, so I had to go to
no.
so I'm on my iPad now, so it's just like.
You made it work. This is all about making things work.
Yep.
All right, we have a Julie. Anybody else here? We got Kelly back.
Kelly?
We got Lisa back. To make sure we haven't lost Becky here.
This is going to be the last time we're going to see you, Tracy, or are we going to see you next week?
I'm coming. I'll come for Monday. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I feel like you've been a part of my life for a little while.
I was thinking that. I was also thinking Heather's going to think that I'm like practically like part of the, part of the district or something. As far as she's concerned, I'm always around. Yeah, no, I will be there. I'll be there on Monday. And usually it will be up to you all, but generally I would make the phone calls in both directions. So I tell the finalists that they'll hear from me on Monday, and they'll hear from me on Monday regardless of what your decisions are. I think we're just waiting to find Becky here.
I can't believe we're on the last interview. Oh my gosh.
Tracy, can you give me a little info on how Monday goes? Because my understanding is we deliberate in open session and then we go into executive session to discuss the offer. Is that right?
Yes. So once you've made your decision, and honestly, how you do that is up to you. But you're a small enough committee where even just having each person speak in turn will work without it becoming unwieldy. But once you've done your deliberation in public session, you've made your decision, you've voted for whoever it is that you choose to select. You have a posted executive session, which is intentional so that you can then discuss amongst yourselves how you want to handle contract negotiations, what kinds of parameters you want to set on salary, what other things you might want to offer, who's going to handle it, all of that kind of thing. And I know Becky's done, as her role as the chair of the screening committee, I know Becky's done a little bit of preliminary work on that. So,
Okay.
So yeah, that's how things work.
And we should have the attorney there, or
It would not be a bad idea to have your attorney there.
Okay.
Yep.
Okie dokie.
I think if it's not a bad idea, then it's a good idea.
Yes. I mean, we will, understanding everyone's always a little reticent to sort of, we know that legal counsel comes with bills, but there also are circumstances in which they are wise, and this is definitely one of them.
Okie dokie.
Yep.
Okay. So last thing, I know we got to get going, but
No, that's
so
fine.
we deliberate.
Yep.
We decide who we want.
Yes.
We go into executive session.
Yep.
We figure out the contract parameters.
Yep.
And then do we go back into open session to vote on what we've decided?
No, because you won't actually vote the contract until you've come to an agreement with whoever you've selected.
Okay.
That is finally, that's a good point. When you finally have a contract that you have agreed to, that will be done that vote will be taken in public session.
Okay.
So since we have a meeting on next Thursday already, is it conceivable that we do this on Monday and then on Thursday we vote? Or is that I'm just trying to figure out if we're adding more meetings in.
It would probably be difficult for that to happen because you would honestly, given the import of what you're deciding, you would want to have it be part of a posted agenda ahead of time, which would mean that you would need to know that you were going to be able to vote the contract on Tuesday in order to actually get it on that agenda for Thursday.
So then our next meeting is 2 weeks after that, but we would probably then have to do a special meeting in between rather than wait those 2 weeks.
Assuming that you can come to an agreement before then yes. You would probably want to call a meeting just to do the contract. And not infrequently, by the way, that will be a posted executive session so that you can then review the terms, ensure that they're what you agreed to, everybody's on the same page, and then go into a public session to actually publicly then vote the contract.
Okay, thank you very much.
No,
I'm just trying to get this all straight.
No, and actually you asking that question is probably helpful to kind of everyone else in the universe who happens to be watching, because most people don't know how this works, because there's only so many times you have to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to let Mr. Vieira in. Good evening, sir. We were just getting next steps cleared away. That's why we were still holding out on you.
Hello,
So I think that you know just about everyone here, and I'm going to turn off my camera, mute myself, and turn you over to Lisa, who will be managing things from here on out as the chair.
Hey, Lisa.
Hello, I'm Lisa Brown, and joining us is Kelly Grady, Julie Mulder, Becky Cherniak, and Heather Morin. We're the Douglas School Committee. You've met some of us.
Hello,
have
everyone.
not. And you can start. You can have a little opening, and then we have about 14 questions that we're going to get through, and we should have time at the end for closing as well.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you so much for this opportunity. I've enjoyed all of our time we have spent together. Would like to just start off with a little bit about me, my values, my beliefs, maybe bringing my resume to life a little bit to you, and sharing a little bit of where I've been and how I've gotten to this point in my career. If the committee will indulge me, I'm going to go back to the spring of 1991, my junior year at UMass. And I had started UMass as a political science major with the hopes of going to law school. I took, as an undergrad, a couple of Spanish classes as prerequisites. I enjoyed them. I did well in them. And then I decided to minor in it. The minor became a major. And in the fall of 91, I had to take my first graduate level course as an undergrad. There were 8 of us. The class was Spanish 555. It was a Latin American novel. And we were reading a book called Madame Barbara. And we were at the point of the class where the professor was asking us what was symbolic about all the characters, their names, what they had done. And we got to the main character, and she said, "Why is Madame Barbara? What's symbolic about this name?" And a light bulb went off in me, and I raised my hand and I said, "She's a mean woman. She's a tyrant. She's barbaric. That's why they call her Madame Barbara." And she looked at me and she said, "Paul, you are 100% correct. That's awesome." And the connection I felt at that time and the way she made me feel was unbelievable. And I said to myself, if I can make a child feel that way, every day inside my classroom. That is so much better than becoming an attorney. And that's when I shifted my career from going to law school to going into education. As I said in a couple other of the meetings together in our interviews, I truly believed when I was a Spanish teacher that all kids could succeed and learn a foreign language. And I was always surprised to hear that some kids didn't take it because they couldn't learn a language. And I worked really hard to demystify that myth in my time in the classroom, because I believe that kids could learn and kids could succeed. And it's the obligation of the classroom teacher to make sure that happens. When I transitioned into different leadership positions, I saw my role as making sure that teachers had the resources and materials that they need to be successful in the classroom to reach our kids. If I'm fortunate enough to become the next superintendent in Douglas, I see one of my main roles in supporting principals and directors to make sure they have the supports and resources they need so that teachers can be successful in the classroom, so that kids succeed at a high level. I've seen it happen time and time again that when you have high standards, a commitment to excellence, and you work in a collaborative environment, that can and does happen. That's a little bit about myself, my beliefs. I hope that our next hour or so together, my passion, my joy of teaching and learning, my love of kids, and my excitement comes through. So I'm looking forward to our questions.
Okay, Paul, thank you. I'll get us started.
Hi, Becky.
Hi. So at this point, how do you envision school reopening in the fall? How are you going to plan for school during COVID-19, and who are you going to consult in the process?
Sure. So I think the process needs to start now. And I think we need to establish and get together a task force that includes central office, school committee. It has to include building level administrators, representatives from the DTA, teachers, your nurse leaders, Board of Health, and community members. We need to pull that group together and start identifying what the issues are and what we can control. Department of Education has issued 4 priority areas when it comes to the reentry of school. They've had, I think, 1 meeting and they're getting ready to do it. We will need to start with those 4 entry levels and start brainstorming what are the areas and what are the concerns we have in each of those 4 areas. We have variables that we can control, and we have variables that we can't control until we get some more guidance. So if we start the process now, we can start addressing those variables that we can control. And then when we get guidance from the Department of Education, we can start doing that. Whatever we do has to be slow, it has to be methodical, it has to be thought out, and it has to be keeping in mind the best interests and the safety and health of our kids, our teachers, and our community. So it's a process that needs to start now with all those shareholders because they all bring a different lens to the table.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'd like to ask you the infamous question. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses?
Certainly. So I see myself to be very collaborative, and I started off by saying that I think in order to be successful in this role, you have to collaborate. You can't do things in isolation. You also need to be able to build relationships. And I think that came out when some of you visited Ashland, that that's something I take a great sense of pride in, is building those relationships with people in order to be able to do what you need to do inside schools. I pride myself in being visible. I love being inside classrooms. I love going to events. I love going to games. I love going to plays. I think it's a strength of mine is my visibility. As I started off by saying, I have high standards and I have a drive and a commitment for excellence because that's what our kids deserve. I had a superintendent who once told me, kids only get 180 days in Mr. Vieira's Spanish 1 class. You got to make every day count. So I've truly gone with that, as that's part of my belief when I say high standards. Kids deserve 180 days of quality education, whether it's in a history class, a math class. So I try to exemplify that and personify that in what I do. I think those are my strengths. As I said, I think probably the one area I have to work on is sometimes I know where I want to go and I know how to get there, but I have to let the process play out. Because if you rush things, I've learned through experience, if you rush things and you rush the process, you don't have success. So I learned that early on in my career, and I've been fortunate enough to work with people who remind me that you have to go through the process. So that's probably the only, well, that's probably the weakness that comes to mind at this point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you describe a challenge that you've had in your school district and the steps that you took and what the outcome was?
A challenge personally or a challenge more globally, or it doesn't matter?
You can take your pick. I think the intention is more of something in the district that was a challenge for the district.
Okay, certainly. So our Mendez school, which is our 3 to 5 school, has a unique setup. It has a school within a school. About 20 years ago, we started what was called the neighborhood program. And we were roughly about 180 kids per class. And what the neighborhood program did is it took 60 kids from each of the grade levels and created a school within a school of 180 kids. At the time that it was created, it was full project-based learning, and all the groups were skills-based. So in an English and a math class, you had 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders all blended together, depending on where they were assessed. At multiple points of the year, students were assessed. So if you were a 3rd grader, you could have started the class off in a 4th grade and then taken an assessment, gone to a 5th grade grouping, and then taken an assessment and gone to a 3rd grade grouping. So it was all skills-based. We had that program for 20 years, and it became a sacred cow, not only in the Mendez, but also in the community. What we found probably about 5 years ago is that the program wasn't allowing for all kids to have an equitable access to high quality education. And what was happening were the top tier kids were going to that program, and it wasn't allowing us to have balance throughout our schools. So one program ended up getting more resources than the other. So we spent some time investigating it because we knew how sacred of a cow it was. But we really wanted to make sure that all kids at the Mendez, all 600 kids, had access to that high quality education. So we spent 1.5 years putting together a task force. We include members of the community, teachers, a couple of students, and we asked the question, do all students at the Mendez have access to a high quality education? We added some subcategories to that. And then when we ended, we made a recommendation to the superintendent and ultimately to the school committee as to what to do. We made the decision that it was in the best interest of all students to create a level playing field for everyone and phase out the neighborhood program so that all kids would be in a 3rd, 4th, 5th grade class in a traditional setting. We all have those sacred cows in the district. I haven't found out what it is in Douglas yet, but that was the big sacred cow. And just to put it in perspective, when I went back and I did an analysis of 5 years of the top 25 graduates in each class, and out of the 25 graduates of each graduating class over a 5-year period, between 20 and 22 of them all came out of that neighborhood program. So you had some high power, high caliber kids going into the program and coming out of it. And we were making the statement that we were potentially looking to remove the program, and it was met with some skepticism. So that was a challenge that we faced. And by putting together a task force and going through it in a slow, methodical process and involving people and communicating throughout over 1.5 years, we came to the decision of moving kids away from that program. Sorry, that was long. You needed to have some background history to understand. Okay.
It's fine. Thank you so much. How do you handle the budget and financial aspects in your district?
Are you talking about the budget process or the daily grind of the budget?
It's both. It's the budget and the financial aspects.
Okay. So the budget, I'll answer that in totality. I think that it might hit on everything. Kevin and Courtney have done a fantastic job with the budget and stabilizing it over the past 3 years. If you go back, I've watched the school committee meeting, and I know that you've had some tough budget times, but you've also been able to go through a budget process in the past 3 years without cutting staff, which is huge. So coming into Douglas, I would listen and I would learn from what they have done. I've had 9 superintendents in 20 years. I've seen 15 budget styles, and I've also seen what happens when a new superintendent comes in and tries to change the budget process. You need to listen and learn to what's going on in Douglas. I would start the process off early in the year, in late summer, early fall. And you can get a pretty good idea of what your budget looks like that early on. 80% of the budget is staffing. So you can know relatively quickly in September what steps teachers are moving towards in the upcoming year. And if you look at historical analysis of how many teachers retire, how many teachers move in columns, and how many teachers leave a district, you can get a good idea of what your contractual obligation to staff is early on in September. Your next piece of the puzzle is your contracts. You don't have to worry about your cafeteria people. You insource that, so that's not outsourced out. You know what your bus obligations are. Working with a special ed director, you should again go through your historical analysis of what out-of-district placement costs go up in the course of a school year. And then you know what your utilities go up. If you level fund your supplies and materials, by the end of September, with a lot of work, you can have a good idea of what your budget for the future year is going to be. In Douglas, 90% of your budget comes from Chapter 70 funding and comes from the town. So again, looking at your enrollment and looking at a historical analysis of what Chapter 70 funding looks like and what town receipts look like in the course of a year, you can get an idea of what your revenue is and what your budget could look like. Once you have those numbers, you have to go back and meet with building principals and ask them what their needs are and find out what you need to do to move the district and address gaps. I think and I've seen it done and it works fantastic, in early November is having the superintendent's office issue an executive summary to the community. That executive summary is a 7 to 10 page document that highlights the entire budget process, why you're asking for additional funds, and explaining those hard to explain things like Chapter 70 funding, circuit breaker money, why money goes more to one area than another area, explaining all those things to the community. It's then my responsibility, along with the business manager, to do the nationwide tour of that thing and go with FinCom, Board of Selectmen, Town Manager, and share out that document with everyone. I would do a budget workshop with the school committee, with Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, and Town Manager in December to have them understand the budget, and then spend from January through town meeting massaging the numbers and looking at the numbers, because sometimes they'll go up, sometimes they go down, in order to get a number to present to the school committee to vote on.
Great.
That's how I envision the process.
Great. What is your experience in advocating for state and federal grants and other sources of funding?
So as the assistant superintendent, a little but not a lot. Just to be completely honest, I'm responsible for the Title I grant. So I write the Title I grant, the Title II grant, the Title IV grant. I've done that for my past 4 years as the assistant superintendent. I manage and I oversee those grants. I attend all the Title I meetings and all the state grant meetings that are put on by DESE. The CASE Collaborative does a workshop in December in which it's all Title I funded, so I attend that. I just wrote the CARES grant for the district and submitted yesterday, so that's done, so I have that done. I checked the DESE website to see what grants are coming in. I've worked with, we have a group in town called Decisions at Every Turn. They're an anti-drug task force that advocates for clean and sober living, that advocates for why kids shouldn't be using tobacco and drugs. We've written a couple of grants with them, some locals, some at a bigger level. So I've had that experience. When I was a principal, I spent a lot of time with our state reps. I know the importance of building that relationship with your state rep and your state senator to have that advocacy on Beacon Hill. But I think that's more of a role of a superintendent than an assistant superintendent. So that's what I've done in my 4 years as an assistant super. I wish I had done more, I'm sorry.
Oh, we need the honest answers. It's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so next question. What is your vision for moving the district forward in light of limitations of budget?
Sure. So I think you need to, one of the first things we would do, and I say this under the umbrella, that we have to get the COVID situation underhand. But one of the things we need to do is we need to create a strategic plan or a blueprint. That is so critically important. When you have a vision and a blueprint and you have your priority areas and it's a living, breathing document, that's when you can start moving a district forward. If everyone knows the direction you're moving in and you're advertising it and you're selling it, it makes it a little bit easier to do things. I've worked in a couple places where that's done. When you're making budget requests, it ties back to your strategic plan. So if one of your areas are, for instance, you want to increase humanities electives at the high school for students in social studies and in English, and you're advocating then for new courses in the program of studies or potentially a new teacher, and people say, why are you doing this? You can say, look at our strategic plan. This is part of it. In creating that strategic plan, you need to include members of the school committee. You need to include your building principals. You need to include community members. That is something that I see happening early on in the process. And then you include parents, you include teachers, and you include representatives from your site council to have input into that. So my vision is to make sure that every student that leaves Douglas is ready to take the next steps in their career, whether it's college, whether it's the workforce, whether it's service, whatever it is. How we get there would go through that strategic plan based off of the needs of the district.
We're trying. I didn't even know. How do you stay involved with students in the district?
Sure. It starts with being visible in schools and in classrooms. I think that came through. I hope it came through when we met. I'm probably in buildings 2 to 3 days a week, and not just in the front door, but inside classrooms, in hallways, talking to kids, talking to teachers. I gave the example, and I'll give them again for those members of the committee who weren't part of those interviews and members of the community who weren't there. In our elementary school for the past 3 years, I've read books to kids. First year was a random book. Second year was Dragons Love Tacos. And this year was Interrupting Chicken. And the kids would see me down the hall with a book and say, hey, are you coming to read to us? At the high school level, we have a Make-A-Wish club, and we grant a wish once a year to a kid in need. And then what we do in November is we go to Give Kids the World Village in Florida, where that's the village where the kids and the families go down to actually receive their wish and go to Disney and all the other attractions. And we do 5 shifts of service work. After my first year there, I was asked to be a part of that trip and go down with 5 other adults and 35 kids. Kids don't ask the assistant superintendent to go on a trip with them to Florida for 5 days if you haven't made some connections with them. As a principal, I did this, and as a superintendent, I would do it. It would be creating a monthly meeting at the middle and at the high school with kids, just to have the opportunity to listen to them about what they love about Douglas, what to change about Douglas. What does a superintendent do? Things like that. Going to games. You have 2 beautiful complexes. You have your fields directly behind it. I just found out that out of the middle school, if you go through the backwoods, through the creek, you can end up at the high school. So I found that out recently. And I also found out that if you're going to go during hunting season, you better be careful. So I know there's a clear path to the high school. So it's having the opportunity to go to those games and see it. And since your complexes are so close, the ability to go out at 3, 4 o'clock before a 7 o'clock meeting is there. Those are just some of the ways you can connect. Having a vibrant and an active Twitter feed is great for kids to see what you're doing and also to post some things of kids on social media. So those are just some of the things, but it starts with being visible and having kids know, hey, who's that man? he's a superintendent, what's his name, what does he do? And that's us by being visible and talking to people.
Kind of building on that, how do you advocate for your district to the local community and then also to the state?
So it starts with building relationships at the town. Two of the ways I already mentioned, and that is having that executive summary of the budget early on in the year so everyone knows what the budgetary needs are of the district. A lot of times I've seen happen, you post something in February, March, or April, and people say, oh, you're just going after the new shiny penny. Why is this being added onto the budget now? If you have a solid plan early on and people can see that plan, it helps build trust. And that's so important to a budget. It's having a great relationship with the town manager, the board of selectmen, and representatives from FinCom. Once you establish those relationships and they know that you have the best interest of kids in mind. Sorry, did I freeze? I just said my internet connection was low. Okay. So if you say that, if people know that you are building relationships, if they know you're advocating for kids, that's important. It's having that strategic plan or that blueprint so that everyone knows the direction the district is going in. And as long as you stay on that path, people know, okay, here is a district that they know where they're going, they know what they need are, and they communicate that. At the local level, as I said, it's building those relationships. It's having conversations. It's being transparent. It's being open. It's making sure that you're meeting on a weekly or a monthly basis with your town manager. And as much as we're asking for support for the schools, we in turn also need to support the town because we're a team and we need to do this together. Those are just some of the things. In terms of the state level, it's being active in the MASS, the Superintendent's Association. They have a great advocacy pipeline to Beacon Hill. It's getting to know your state reps and your state senators and having regular conversations with them. I did this more as a principal than I did as a superintendent, but it was amazing how many times you would say to your state rep or your senator, this is what's going on. And they would say, I need to go check this out at Beacon Hill, and they'd get feedback for you. A lot of times you didn't get the answer you wanted, but if they don't know what the issues are in schools and some of the issues that you're facing, they can't advocate for you in Boston. So again, it's continuing to build relationships, being visible, talking to people, and as important, it's having a vision, making sure that it's communicated and people understand it and know it.
Thank you. Can you elaborate on what your leadership style is and your vision to where Douglas schools should be heading?
Sure. So my leadership style, I think I touched a little bit on it. I see myself as making sure that principals and directors have the supports and resources they need to be successful in their schools so that kids, teachers, and kids are successful. I firmly believe that you hire the best person to do the job and you provide them the supports and resources to do it, and you give them the autonomy to go off and do their job. I'm not a micromanager. How that looks for certain people varies from person A to person B to person C. So you have to build those relationships with people to know what people are looking for supports and help. If you just look at your central office and your building level administrators, you have people who've been principals for 2 or 3 years, but you also have people who've been in leadership roles for 15, 20 years. Their supports and what they're going to need for help is going to vary from person to person. So that's a little bit about my leadership style. In terms of my vision for Douglas, I'm going to put COVID-19 aside for a minute. And I really have a 10-year vision for Douglas. And it starts with us, it ends with us being a model district across the Commonwealth where people are going to say in 10 years, I want what Douglas has. And we're going to start small. We're going to start in 2.5-year increments. We're going to start locally. Then we're going to go to Worcester County. Then we're going to Central Mass. And then we're going to the state. And even if we only accomplish 2 of those 4 things, I want Douglas Public Schools to be a model district across the Commonwealth. And I think we can do that. I think the foundation that Mr. Maines has set for the past 3 years has you on that trajectory. We have to deal with COVID for the next 12 to 18 months, but putting that aside, it's what can we do to give kids the best possible education, to get them ready for life after high school, and to start celebrating and advertising and marketing all the great things that are happening so that we can attract more people to the district and we can celebrate the work that's being done. I can go into the how later, but I know we're pressed for time.
Julie, I think you're up.
It's you.
What is your relationship with staff and with school leaders?
Sure. I think it's always been fantastic. You know, starting with our local unions, whether it's been as assistant principal, or assistant superintendent, I've always had a fantastic relationship with the union. I believe in meeting with them often and talking to them. And if you're going to have an issue, it's best to start the conversation off with the association president before you move in a direction and have things go forward. My relationship with staff has been great. I hope, and I don't know who was at the Ashland site visit, but I think that came through pretty much loud and clear with the people that you met. I take a lot of pride in building relationships with people. I value that. It is so important. Deep down inside, people want to feel respected. People want to feel valued. People want to feel heard. People want to feel that they matter. That's all part of building relationships. If you're not feeling those things, then it makes it really difficult as a leader to move a district forward. So if you show people that you care about them, that you value them, that you listen to them, that they feel heard, that you've taken time to build relationships with them, then you can start doing some pretty amazing things and you can start doing some pretty amazing work. So I think if you ask staff, or you went back and you asked them, they would say that they know me, I value them, I listen to them, and that relationships are critically important to the success of a school district. Did I answer that? Okay.
Going a step further from that, how do you effectively communicate with parents and the community?
Sure. So communication is something I'm key on, and I hope this isn't too long of a answer, but you have to communicate with everyone in a district. I talked a little bit about having building principals every week send me a report that highlights what's going on in their building. That gives me some key information as to what I need to do as a superintendent. From there, I can share that information on a Friday with the school committee, so you know on a weekly level what's going on in a building. It's sending out a Friday newsletter to staff and to the community so they can see what's going on in schools. Those are all critically important things. As I said, communicating out your executive summary and communicating out your strategic plan is important for the community to see what is going on. You need to create and have a strong social media presence. Kids love going on Facebook and Twitter. No, not Facebook. Facebook's more for parents, but kids love going on Twitter and seeing themselves. Parents love going on Facebook and Twitter and seeing what's going on. It's creating those stories and communicating what's going on in a district. It's myself with a chair and the vice chair bi-monthly sitting down and having school committee agenda planning sessions for half hour, 45 minutes, where we go through the agenda and we talk it out so we're all on the same page and we know what's going on. It's meeting with kids, as I said, once a month to get some feedback from them, but also to give them some feedback. I heard this early and I believe it. We need to create the narrative and we need to tell the story of the Douglas Public Schools before someone else does it. And I think a perfect example of that is we've all seen what happens when there's a crisis in school. Police car pulls up, an ambulance comes, kids start texting their parents, and they're telling the story of what's going on before we tell the story. And I want to make sure that what we're sharing and what we're communicating out is positive, is correct, and is informative. And that's why we need to set that, that standard. So I know it's a long question, but I just want to say you need to communicate with all those shareholders, and you need to do it often. And it's one of those things that no matter how much you communicate, there's always more that you can do or should have been done.
Sorry. How will you, as a superintendent, continue to improve our academic performance and create opportunities to appeal to students from pre-K to 12th grade?
So as I said, it's coming in and listening and learning to the needs of the district. What Paul Vieira wants isn't important. What the district wants is important. So it'd be starting off by listening to parents, listening to kids, listening to teachers, listening to school committee, having those dialogues as to what's needed in the district. It goes back to that strategic plan, which is critically important, and that identifies some needs. One thing I've done in the past year is I've done a curriculum self-study in PE, health, ELA, math, and science. And what we did is we did a self-study in those disciplines. We did 2 a year. And what we did is we went out, we did surveys of teachers, we did open-ended questions of teachers. And what we did is we created a 3-year action plan of what needs to be done and what areas need to be addressed in each of those disciplines to better meet the needs of kids. That's a great way to start identifying pre-K to 12, what needs to be done in a particular discipline. And it was great because we got teachers together, and it's not too often that you can get K, 3, 7, and 12 all in the same building, all in the same table together to communicate. So doing those self-studies is a great way to identify issues. But I would want to come in and have conversations with people, have conversations with building principals, and then start moving things forward. I know that in terms of keeping kids in district, that's always an issue. I know that Mr. Maines with Mr. Romano have created a new pathway to try to keep kids from going to the Aggies. So it's building off of that. And I know that's still a little bit in flux with what's happened the past 3 months, but it's making sure that that launches to keep kids in district. It's having dialogue and conversation with parents and families to find out why kids are leaving the district. What aren't we providing in the Douglas Public Schools to students that could better keep them in? And then it's beginning to address it. Some things are within our control, others aren't.
Great, thanks. You've already touched a little bit upon the next question with a 10-year vision, so
Okay.
what are you going to use this time? Where will you and where will the Douglas Public Schools be 5 years from now?
Sure. So we split it. So I think we need to create and make sure that we have a stable budget and a sustainable budget. I hate to talk about budget, but a lot of what we need to do to move forward goes back to that budget. So we will be in a place where hopefully we have a sustainable budget that best meets the needs of our kids. As we're coming out of COVID-19, the social emotional well-being of our students and our staff is critically important. We need to make sure that we have mechanisms in place and safeguards in place to make sure that that's being addressed. We need to make sure that as kids are rolling into September of 2020 and also September of 21, we have ways that we can identify the gaps in learning of kids so we can bridge those gaps and work with them. We need to work at identifying the needs of our high risk and our most unique learners and closing those achievement gaps for kids. Going back to what I said, I want the Douglas Public Schools to be a model district where people come and look at us and say, how did you do that? You guys are doing more with less. I said this earlier, and it's kudos to each of you, and it's kudos to the administration team. Every metric that I looked at, whether it was ClearGov, DESE, whether it was DART or Radar, your per pupil expenditure rate is at the bottom quarter of all like schools, but yet you're performing in the top quarter. That tells me you have a committed, dedicated staff who are working tirelessly to get kids what they need. And you have kids who are working so hard to achieve. I don't think we're ever going to change a Chapter 74 formula, so it is what it is, unfortunately. But it's, how do we sell that message? How do we promote that message that the taxpayers are getting a fantastic bang for their buck? That although we don't have and we're not getting a lot of revenue, look at how our kids are performing. Look how our kids are performing on all these metrics. Look how they're performing on SATs. Look at how they're performing on AP exams. Look at all the AP programs we're offering. Look at a small high school, the different pathways that have been created. I think you have 3 now, and you're looking at creating a 4th. Those are all great things that you can share with the community and continue to build upon. So that's my vision, is just to highlight that, promote that, expand upon that, so that when kids leave, they can come back and say, wow, I got a great education. I'm ready for whatever they're going to do when they leave.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Question. We have 3 qualified candidates for this position. Why do you believe you are the right choice for Douglas?
Sure. So I'll tell you why Douglas. I knew a little bit about the district from my relationship with Superintendent Maines. When the opportunity popped up, I clicked on the link, and the first thing I saw was that last line of your mission statement, where decisions are made in the best interest of students. When I did research, it continued to be there. It was on every web page that I saw, and there was example after example after example of not only do you write that, but you believe that. And there's evidence of that, whether it is the fact that you've done an override, and a successful override, which isn't easy to do. You have 4 schools on 2 great campuses. You have new buildings, you have a renovated building, and you have 1 old building. But you have a community that takes great pride in what they do and who they are. And you can see that. A couple weeks ago, you approved a new special education position. And that's tough to do in the midst of COVID-19 and in tough budgetary times. But what you're doing is you're making sure that the best interest of kids are being met. And you have a superintendent that has created a fantastic foundation for future. My time since that first interview, when I listened to all the questions that you've asked, they're all student-centered questions, which is amazing. The questions that you're asking the candidates are, what do you have, or what can we do to better the opportunity for kids? That's something that I want to be a part of. That's who I am. It's what I believe in. You know, as I go through, and it's really difficult to connect on Zoom as you're looking at 6 different screens, sometimes with 20 people. And as I'm answering questions, a lot of times I can see multiple people nodding. It means that what I'm saying resonates with them. What I'm saying is of value to them. And what I'm saying could be a great idea to better help the Douglas Public Schools. That excites me. That's something that I want to be part of. In listening to this and going through this process and seeing all that, fit's important. And in everything that I've seen, I think that not only would I be a great fit for the Douglas Public Schools, but the Douglas Public Schools would be a great fit for me. So why me? I think the work that I've done and my commitment is in perfect alignment with what you're doing. And just in closing, I'm very happy where I'm at in Ashland. I've been there for 4 years. We're doing some great work there. I'm not in a rush to leave. I don't need to leave. I'm very happy there. In looking to take the next step in my career, I want to go to a place that's a great match for me. I've seen all too often in 25 years, superintendents take jobs where the match isn't there. And as I've gone through this process over the past month, I think from what I've seen, I think the match is great. And that's so important to me. So that's why Douglas, and why I feel I'd be great to work with you.
Right. Well, we gave everybody an option for closing. You kind of did a closing already.
Okay.
You can totally add to it if you'd like, because we have plenty of time.
No, I think that summed everything up.
Great. So if everybody else is all set? All good. We're good. We appreciate the time. And this was quite the process. And I don't think any of us have ever done it before. Well, Julie did, but not via Zoom.
Well, if you talk about becoming a model district, these superintendent searches take 3 to 4 months. You might have pioneered and trademarked across the Commonwealth how you can do a quality, right, Tracy? A quality, effective superintendent search in 1 month without driving people overly insane. So we're already, well, overly insane. Overly insane.
Inbox looks like.
So we're on that trajectory to becoming that model district through this process.
There you go. Step in the right direction already. So Paul, as you know, they're going to be deliberating on Monday, and
Correct.
you will hear from me regardless on Monday.
Okay. Awesome. Is there anything else the committee would like to ask? Anything that I need to clarify? More than happy to do that. I know it's been a long 3.5 hours on Zoom, and there's only, you hit a saturation point after a while, so I don't want to prolong what's been already a long night for you. Everyone's nodding yes.
I think you answered everything clearly.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Have a great night, everyone.
Good to
Thank
see
you so
you.
much. I look forward to hearing from you. Take care.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
And make sure that as you're closing this out, that, I mean, you all have my contact information, so obviously you can get in touch if you haven't.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
I'm just gonna put it right out there. In the event, if I'm knocking on all the woods, if it ever happens that a school committee makes an offer and a contract is not agreed upon, or a candidate decides, you know what, I changed my mind for whatever, any number of reasons, can you offer the position to one of the existing finalists? Or
Yes.
do you have to? Okay.
Yep, you would want to obviously get back together again and revote and
Yep.
then renegotiate. But yes, you certainly can.
Okay.
That happens even. So like
Okay.
that's not
Well,
even
yeah, I knew about the, like, if you have 2 finalists and you make the offer,
one
then
drops out. Yeah.
somebody drops out, then you have to start from scratch. So I just wanted to make sure that, okay.
No, but that does occasionally happen, and that is entirely kosher.
But it's not going to happen.
As you said, knock wood.
I don't think it will.
Thank you.
I think we're good.
All right.
I think we'll see everybody on Monday, and we're going to need a motion to adjourn.
Can I just add one thing?
Yep.
Thank you, Tracy, for your work. I mean, your tirelessness. I mean, I know I just joined, but it's been a fast pace, like everybody stated. And I've really enjoyed just having the expertise of you to guide us through this. I think it's huge. So thank you. Thank you.
Well,
Absolutely.
I mean this quite sincerely. I did have one search that sort of had to drop into Zoom halfway through, but they at least had started in person. The fact that you guys have done this entirely remotely, and I mean, you offboarded Brett, you onboarded Heather, you've had a lot going on here. And because we are having this as a public session, let me also say that it isn't just you, obviously. It also is your administration, it's your town, it's your student body. I mean, you had kids who were giving up a really nice afternoon outside multiple days in a row. I mean, so credit to Douglas, honestly, for really embracing the process, because it's because of all of you that this has gone as smoothly as it has. So as Becky said, knock wood, we get there all the way.
We're close. We're getting there.
We're close.
So we're on for 7 on Monday. Is that right, Lisa?
Correct.
Okay. Back to normal time.
And do we have the just our regular meeting on? I know that we should have a regular meeting on Thursday.
Thursday, yeah.
As of right now, yes.
Okay. All right.
That's it.
Very good.
So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn at 8:44 p.m.
Second.
Motion by Becky, second by Julie. Roll call vote.
Becky,
Julie Mulder, aye.
Heather Moore and
Can you
I.
get me?
Kelly Grady, aye.
Lisa Brown, aye. We're done. Thank you.
Very
Good night, everybody.
Thank you,
Have a
Donna.
good weekend.